All right. Well, we got an exciting one. It's been a bit of a hiatus here, almost 2 weeks since we were last on the air, but this is well worth the wait. We've got a special interview guest on the show with us today, Sean Tufts, former NFL linebacker, spent 3 seasons with the Carolina Panthers, so right in my neck of the woods here. From Colorado, had a standout college career at the University of Colorado before making his way to the NFL, and now finding his way in the cybersecurity space. So he's got quite the story, Mark. Really looking forward to talking with Sean. And the draft just happened, and he's got some his own draft experience, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting some of that information as well. Just picking the brain of someone who's lived that life.
Yeah, that'll be easier for me to understand than anything in the cybersecurity world. So if we keep the conversation that direction, it should be easy for me to comprehend. I'm very excited and lucky to get a guy like him to join us here on the podcast.
For sure, yeah. So we will not delay any further. Without further ado, here we go in our interview with Sean. All right, welcoming into the show, Sean Tufts. How's it going, Sean? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you guys.
Do you prefer former NFL linebacker or current cybersecurity expert for your under title here? What's more? Where's the weight of that go for you, Sean?
That's a good question. And I wanted to start off with a joke on that, but I got nothing. Honestly, they both kind of feed each other. Honestly, so much of what we do from cybersecurity is a team sport. So we talk a lot about how to build the right programs and what we don't think about as we're assembling a team and all that kind of stuff. They both go hand in hand.
There you go. There's a lot of lessons to glean from NFL experience. From what I understand, a lot of former NFL players talk about how that's bled into their life in many different ways, but obviously on their future career paths and stuff. So I'm excited to get into that a little bit later in the show. But let's kind of just start off from the top, Sean. Your background, I know you had a wrestling background, so I'd love to hear about that, how that translated to football for you, because that seems to be the sport that a lot of scouts and NFL coaches talk about when they talk about recruiting guys and studying guys. That seems to translate super well to the NFL game. So curious about that and just what got you into football and kind of how that progressed for you.
I do want to talk about wrestling, but I got to do my big reveal first.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
I've been in 20 years in the dark without being able to wear my Colorado gear because we've been a little under 500 for most of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to people, I was like, no, trust me, we were pretty good. Colorado, we were up to like number 3 in the country when I was there. And they were like, when was that? 92? Like, no, man, come on. So we're back.
Credit.
Well, your head coach has to stop tweeting for a little bit. And I think otherwise you're in good space right now.
Yeah, he's not making friends from other schools. That's true, but we don't care about them. So,
hey, yeah, okay. No publicity is bad publicity, right? When it comes to getting the name out there, and Colorado is definitely firmly in that conversation. So,
and he is good at getting publicity. That is,
cool.
That is his calling card for sure.
Okay, you guys talk about them, Dan.
Yeah.
My number one athletic accomplishment is not football. It is wrestling, actually. And I didn't even win. I got second in state, and I lost. I remember going out of what was then the McNichols Arena in Denver, now Pepsi Center. And I remember, I've never been overcome with emotion where I couldn't function and couldn't, articulate thoughts. But that one got me. And it was because it's such an individual sport.
Yeah.
And then it's also more physically taxing than football. Football is probably more kind of lumpy, bruisey, painful. Wrestling was a cardio. It was and I was really good at headbutting people. So that was you'd always walk off the mat and a little bloody. And so that was just a much more intense success and failure loop.
Sure.
Yeah. When you think about that time as a wrestler, being a multiple sport athlete, so much of what people say about the NFL, there's that new Austin Rivers debate, right? Like, could you take NBA players and put them in the NFL? I laugh at that so much because we now see so many parents saying, like, oh, you got to get your kid if they want to be a a 5-star quarterback and get him recruited. They should only be throwing footballs, from like middle school on, and just focus on one sport. Where do you fall on that as a guy who is able to be successful at multiple sports all through your life before you then leaning into one sport that gets you through college and into the major leagues? Like, to me, I think it's ridiculous to pigeonhole your kids into one sport, especially that early on. I mean, maybe once you're a senior in high school, you're kind of like, hey, now we're going to focus on one thing to get you that scholarship, whatever. But it doesn't make sense to me.
No, you shouldn't specialize until you're into college. It's just silly. I played lacrosse as well, Dan. So was all state in that as well. Ooh, that was humble. Yeah. So yeah, it was all state in 3 sports, and that fed each other. That was brilliant, especially the sports I didn't pick them because it's mostly I defaulted out of basketball and baseball because I was so bad at them both. But that skill of lacrosse, the hand-eye coordination practice, was like nothing you would get on a football field in a training environment. Nothing. The physical body control that came from wrestling, the hand placement, fighting, the working how to do all these kind of moves, that was all wrestling. So combining those 2 things in the offseason, letting my body recover from, football's a different one. You can't play all year round, obviously, but letting your body do something different, letting your hips open in a different way, letting your spine rotate in a different way, letting your shoulders operate in different functions as a 13-year-old is so important. Now, there are some sports out there, soccer, you don't peak too early. You peak earlier. Gymnastics, those girls and men, they peak at like age 12 and 13, right? Soccer's like 14 and 15. Football's clearly a little bit later. I think you need to do as many sports as possible. And coaches like that. They want to see you compete. I know that when I was in the state finals for wrestling, there was a couple football coaches in that crowd, and they wanted to see how I competed, and they wanted to know what that looked like. And I don't know, it's a good avenue to see it. Another way to advertise yourself.
Yeah, it's probably also a good indicator of, can they juggle multiple commitments, right? I mean, are you able to play on multiple different teams and take coaching from different types of coaches and all of that stuff? So, that seems to be the route to go. If you're someone that wants to play multiple sports, go for it, and build up that well-rounded skill set before you go off to college. So, in your time, you grew up in Colorado, right? Did you grow up a Broncos fan?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, I was in high school. So let's see, I was 15 when they won their first Super Bowl, which means I was 10 when they lost like 4 Super Bowls. Some of my earliest memories are going over to my neighbor's house and watching the Broncos. I remember when Elway did his 360 on 3rd down against Green Bay.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I broke my buddy's nose.
In his celebration?
In celebration, yeah. I stood up and gave one of those, and he went.
Nice.
We had a house full of guys. We were young football players. We were so excited to see that team gel and grow. And now it's cool because what's crazy to me now? I saw Mark Schlereth in the airport the other day. And I'd met him before.
Oh, really?
He doesn't remember me. But I walked up behind him, said, "Go Vandals," and we had a little talk. And he was my idol, man. I got to talk to Bill Romanowski one time and be like on the same footing, and that was weird. Like, it was so neat to go back. And what was I? I was 10 years after them, but be able to share some contacts, talk to people, like play in that world was really fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing. We all as kids grow up, fans of a certain college or a certain NFL team in certain parts of the country. And when you're going into the recruiting process then, and you're starting to get noticed in those coaches, right, who are at your wrestling state finals, do they, in your experience, or, a good recruiter versus a bad recruiter, do they play on that? Like, hey, does University of Colorado play on you're a hometown kid, we want you to stay here, versus those out-of-state schools saying, listen, we don't have anyone like you in our state. They try to play into that ethos. Walk us through a little bit of what that recruiting process was like for you versus maybe what you would if you were involved in recruiting, prey on when you're trying to get these kids to commit to your school. Or now in the transfer portal, is Dion going around telling kids you need to get your butt up here up to Colorado because we don't have kids like you in our state?
First off, we do. Colorado's an amazing hotbed of football. We're good. So number one, I think my data is old because NIL and transfer portals have really disrupted
Yeah.
what used to be the model. So what I want to do is share to you when I see Colorado rosters be great, what that breakdown looks like. We need to get the top 10 recruits out of the state.
Yeah.
We have to. If we let those kids go somewhere else, then we're losing traction. And that's happened before, right? Tony Baselli, Lindell White. There's been some great players out of Colorado have gone on to amazing careers. Bo Scaife, he's the only reason to have a football career. We can touch on that later. We need to capture that first tranche of 10. We can lose one or two out of there, but we can't do a lot. We're going to be a third Texas and a third California just by our geography. And if we can get some of those players that are looking at, if someone's looking at Texas versus Colorado and they live in Dallas or they live in Houston, like we're a step behind, right? Or we were,
Yeah.
at least before Prime. So that was historically the way we had to win, was to get some of those players who were kind of on the fence. They knew they could go to UT, but maybe not play a lot. They knew they could go to A&M, but maybe be a fourth year guy. So that was how we used to build rosters. I think today it's all about what can you do right now. There is no incubation period. There is no idea of redshirting. Honestly, I was talking to someone the other day, and they think the idea of recruiting from high school is dead.
Interesting.
Think about that. Now,
just wait and just get guys in the transfer portal and just not even, just recruit the kids who are already in college.
Well, I'm going to use, let's pick on Ohio. If I'm Ohio State,
yeah,
I'm going to let Akron and I'm going to let Miami of Ohio go do a lot of heavy high school recruiting. And then I'm going to rate them. And I'm going to make them okay with that because they get 2 years, 1 year of that player's time. And we all have some sort of professionalism handshake contract to know that they better get the most out of them in 2 years and refine them because they're going up a league if they do perform well. And I don't like that. I actually quite hate that. But you know what? It's happening.
It's almost like using, people talk about, obviously college football is a feeder league for the NFL. We'll get in here the draft here in a second, but it's like almost in the Power 5 schools using the other schools as the feeder leagues for them. I mean, it's an interesting, really unique way to look at that.
Yeah, I think the more we can get to, let's touch on another thing. The more we can get to regulation, the better. Yeah. I love the whatever you call that, the thing you kick the ball, soccer. I love their model in EPL. If Colorado was garbage for 20 years, right? We just were not good. We had one bright spot out of 20. And if we could have dropped down to the Mountain West and played Colorado State every year, played Wyoming every year, played Boise every year, built a little momentum, got back on our feet without just getting nailed by SC and Oregon and Washington, gotten our funding back, gotten in the right order, we would have been in a much better shape. We would have recovered a lot faster by being able to do that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. For you, when you were going through the recruiting process, first off, how early was playing college football on your radar? I mean, was that something that you knew early in high school that's what you wanted to do, or was it something like junior, senior year you started to realize, I can actually do this at a D1 level and maybe make this my career one day?
I mentioned the name Bo Scaife earlier. It's probably not a guy on your radar, right? He played 8 years for the Titans. Played at the University of Texas. He was the number 2 tight end in the country coming out of Colorado.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can Google him now if you want. It's okay.
No, that Bo Scaife rings a bell. I was going to ask if he was a tight end, but that's about as far as I know about him. But 8 years in the league, that's a pretty solid.
He had a great career. I think he had an ACL per year, but whatever.
Yeah.
I wish that was a joke, actually.
Yeah.
So he was the big dog. I was a junior. He was a senior. Those 2 high schools in that area were the perennial state champs until Valor and Christian McCaffrey came along. We would play every year. I was a junior. I was a nobody. They gave him – he was a tight end. They'd line him up at receiver and throw him the ball. They'd put him at tailback and run the ball. They put him at tight end and throw the ball. He was the whole offense, right? So they had a goal line stand. I got him 3 times in a row. First down, they put him at tailback, got him. Second down, put him at tailback, got him. And then so it went from first and goal on the 4 to first and goal on the 15. And my life was never the same since.
That's incredible.
Wow.
I was having a good season, and that was clearly 3 great plays. But yeah, my life was never the same after that. So I remember it was like two weeks later, I walked into the gym and my coach, he was a funny guy. He grabbed me, Mike Wolford, shout out. He grabbed me by the ear and was like, "You got to come to my office." Like kind of like mopey and like I was in trouble. So, oh no, what did I do? And I was still like kind of dopey and humble and nerdy. And he's like, "Kid, you made all state." I was like, "Oh." Like that was a moment I knew like there's something else happening here that I can leverage. Yeah, that was the story.
Nice. So you end up going to Colorado.
Yeah.
What went into your decisions? Because I think you had like Michigan was a close contender, and was it UCLA? What ended up making Colorado the choice? And then I really want to hear about Brian Cabral because former 85 Bear, and we're both from Chicagoland. Mark's the diehard Bears fan on the show, so that's pretty cool.
I mean that was why I went to Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
Number one, I had an opinion, or my dad and I came to this opinion, that it was better to be this is going to sound demeaning, a big fish in a small pond. I want to go somewhere where I was wanted, where I was needed, where on day one, they were going to be like, "Hey, you're excited you're coming through the door." And I saw this from some of my players, some of my roommates, some of my best friends. When they walked in the door at Colorado later, everyone was like, "Oh, who's that guy?" Right? I wanted to be someone that they were invested in. And Brian Cabral was he had coached probably at that point. We were being called linebacker U in '98 because we just run through an incredible string of 2 Butkus winners, a bunch of All-Americans, a bunch of just top dog talent and players. So we were in that conversation with Penn State on who was better. And Cabral was the guy. He knew how to do that. He has the highest EQ of anyone I've ever met. Absolutely.
Really, just knows how to push the buttons and get the most out of guys.
You know what he was good at? He was good at experimenting. So, do you remember him, Jordan Dizon? He was a top pick a couple years ago out of Colorado. Oh, I guess a lot of years.
Doesn't ring a bell.
So I didn't realize this until I heard this guy that was a couple of years later. I think he was a second-round pick to Detroit, I think. Second in the Butkus. So he was a young cat, undersized. We called him the janitor because he what? I'm not going to tell that story. Never mind. We called him the janitor because we thought he was the janitor the first day he walked in. No one knew who he was. He was kind of ratty and small, not what you would expect from a prototype linebacker. And I remember hearing a thing 10 years later where he said Cabral walked up to him right before a game, and Jordan used to get really anxious, really uptight, really nervous about making a mistake. So Cabral came up to him one time and was just playing around. I was like, "Hey, your first missed tackle is on me. I'm not going to write it on the grade sheet. I'm not going to record it. I'm just going to nod and we're going to move on." And that lit Jordan on fire. That was like the thing he needed. So then he went like 10 games and didn't miss a tackle.
Yeah, pressure's off. Yeah.
Pressure's off. The first one's on me. I got a freebie. I'm going to go make things move. So with me, he was playing around with we ended up finding it, and it was I bet you can't. Those words will make me move like nothing else. I don't care about, I'll give you $200 for this. I don't care about, I'll be disappointed if you don't. I bet you can't is. So he told that to my wife at our wedding. So every now and then she'll be like, "I bet you can't."
So, yeah. Can't get away with anything now.
So stupid. Yeah. So we were looking at, when I was coming out, I had a great junior season. That moment I mentioned earlier fueled a bunch of great pub and rolled in the door of just people starting to recruit. I had about half the Big Ten, half the, I guess, Pac-10 back then, and then most of the Big 12 were kind of on the radar, right? So I didn't like the Pac-10. I was a middle linebacker. I wanted to play my game like Brian Urlacher, in the box guy, running deep. I wasn't a big cover guy. I wanted to play in the Big 10, Big 12. The tricky part wasn't recruiting at the time. It was so letter-based. Like, we didn't really do email in 98, 99, that we didn't know who was real or not. So my dad he had some cojones to him. Can I say cojones on your podcast?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He told me this. He goes, "Sean, we're getting in the car." And I was like, "Okay, where are we going?" He said, "LA." "Okay, what are we doing?" He said, "We're going to drive to UCLA, USC, Arizona State, and come home." "Okay, what's our plan? Do we have an appointment?" "No." So what he would do, we would show into town and we would call our contact and be like, "Hey, we're in LA for a family thing. We're just here. We want to make the most of it. If we could come by tomorrow between these hours, would that be okay? And so we just bomb in on coaches. It was crazy. And so we did that at UCLA, and the head coach wasn't Pete Carroll then. It was the guy before him. I'm not going to say his name. He kept the door locked and didn't come out. He got some secretary to like walk us around the campus and show us the Heisman trophies, and then like kind of skirted us out. We were probably only there for about 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
UCLA rolled out the red carpet. They found a guy from my high school to give me a tour of campus, like a student. They did a full tour of athletic department, got me a meeting with the head coach, got me a meeting with the defensive coordinator, all that cool stuff. And so then we were able to see who was real and who was not, right? SC eventually blew apart, and UCLA was still interesting. So we did that in the Big Ten too. Went to Tennessee, went to Notre Dame, went to Michigan, went to Ohio State. Ohio State, Michigan, same thing. What was your guess? Who wouldn't, between Ohio State and Michigan, who didn't come out?
Well, Ohio State.
Ohio
Then,
State,
like
yeah,
around was that early Jim Tressel era? You know what I mean? Like hot shots of Maurice Claret era of college football.
You know, I remember when we walked in, Katzenmoyer was just out of the NFL, and he was sleeping on the couch. And I was like, "Jeez, what is that?" You were like, "Oh, that's another middle linebacker." And I was like, "Oh God." Who was the coach there? It was before Tressel. It was the guy before him.
No.
God, I don't remember.
This would have been what, 2001 at that point?
That would have been 98.
Or
98, yeah,
okay,
getting recruited. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
So yeah, it was Ohio State. They didn't come out. They gave me a little thing. It was fine. But Michigan like did the same thing, roll up their carpet. It was really interesting to see who was real and who was not, and being able to get that kind of gut check on them in a way that like I've told people that story before, and everyone else like, "You're a psychopath. Like you did that." Yeah. We'll see.
Well, back then it makes a ton of sense. Nowadays, you just expect a FaceTime, or you know what I mean, or they're literally showing up in a jet or sending you a jet, or it's crazy how it's exploded. So, talk me a little bit through, like, you're at Colorado, kind of the same process then of like, at what point in time in the college football career is it starting to be like, oh, no, like, you know, you could be an NFL player? Because that's that thing. You always see that statistic around the draft, like, you know, 97% of all of these athletes that play college football, only like 3% of them even make the NFL, and then like less than 1% even make a roster or, you know, get a contract. Like, so like where is that click in your career at Colorado to where all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like this could be a real thing? And how did that work? Was it the NFL that started letting you know, or was it the coaches, the media? Like, who's the first one that gets in your ear, starts going, I think there's something here?
I would say twofold. Number one, Gary Barnett was a great coach. He's probably one of the only coaches. Actually, we ran this number. I think there's only 3. That's a good. Can we do a trivia in this?
Yeah, right.
4 coaches have won conference titles in 2 conferences.
Oh, yeah.
Did Saban ever win it at Michigan State?
Yes.
Well, then he's one. He's one of them.
I'm light on that.
I mean, I think Harbaugh won a Pac-12 and he won a Big Ten.
Yep, I think he's one of them.
Those would be my 2. I submitted my 2, Dan.
I
mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a great question.
So Gary Barnett's won because he won with Northwestern and they won with Colorado. I guess you could at this point you could start having a question like, does the Pac-12 count or the Pac-2?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The current Pac-2, yeah.
So Gary said to me when he was recruiting me, and we got to be close. We're still close friends, actually. He told me, he said, "Hey, look, here's the thing. You got everything you need to go be as good as anyone in the world. You've got the package for it. You've got the mentality for it. And I want you to forget I ever said that. You shut up. You put your head down. You go to work. And at the end of 4 to 5 years, it'll pay for itself. But if you start putting your eye on that goal, you're going to get distracted." And that was like the right words I needed in my head because I had a lot of imposter syndrome at the time. And I'm just a dork. I'm a dork. So that like hit me really, really hard. You didn't have to be the big, bold personality. You didn't have to be Andy Katzenmoyer. Like, you just got to go play. That's it.
Yeah.
Just go play and everything else will take care of itself. So I didn't actually believe it, Mark, until the actual draft. Like through the combine. You know what? I'll take that back. When I started seeing friends of mine at Colorado get drafted in the 1st round, 2nd round, 4th round, 7th, like when I started seeing that and seeing those guys who I knew they were and prepare, I was like, you know what? All right, I got a window. I think this can go.
Yeah.
So that gave me a little confidence going through the draft, having known those people.
Was your experience at Colorado, like now that you look back on it, especially, do you envision like what your career path would have been like had you gone to a different school? Like, do you ever think about that?
Oh yeah,
Does it
butterfly
feel
effect
like
stuff.
Colorado
Yeah, the
put you
butterfly
on that
effect.
path?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Especially when Michigan was like in the national title, whatever, a couple years ago. Damn, looks nice.
That big blue, yeah.
You know what? I don't though. My life is going great. I met my wife in college there. She played soccer at Colorado, and you know what? All I care about is I can wear these colors and be proud of it. I love my time there. I love the people there. I got the most, and I got the best training in the world to go do that job, and I turned that job into a couple other better jobs, which is kind of the goal.
Yep, exactly. That is, it's working right.
I think that's
So,
one thing that's missing, by the way.
What?
Everyone's all upset about NIL and paying these players. And they're all upset about, are we letting kids in that shouldn't be in schools and graduation rates and all this crazy stuff. I have a separate opinion on this. It's one of the few ways to transformationally correct decades of opportunity.
yeah,
A lot of guys we pull in, me included. I should not have been at the University of Colorado. I should have been at like a Mesa State or Northern Colorado. Like academically, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I remember getting in a fight with someone from my high school, great high school. And he was like, yeah, man, this person shouldn't be in my class with me. He's embarrassing. I was like, hey, I see what you're saying. I disagree with you. And he was like, why? I said, look, you came in here, and this college is going to move you there. It's going to be a delta. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your career and your life and all that kind of stuff. We bring some people in here, and they'll never get to where you were in high school. True. But that delta is much bigger, and they earned it in a way that you didn't have to, and that you let yourself sleep through finals, and you let yourself do this other stuff. So when I look at the players from the 1990 team that won a national title, when I look at the players from my team that I know, like these people have fundamentally changed their lives and their entire family's lives. So think about like Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a grand story. He has an incredible family in a safe, great neighborhood, and that's not necessarily where he was from.
right. Yeah.
I know a lot of coaches or players who've gone on and their moms live with them because they get them out of those locations. They start bringing their family into Boulder. They start bringing their family into their NFL cities and leaving that other life behind. And that's a narrative that doesn't get enough attention.
Do you think that one of my favorite games to play is like looking back on people pre-NIL era, and you say to yourself, like Caitlin Clark, she exploded and she capitalized on NIL. A guy like a Tim Tebow would have been astronomical what he would have made. When you think like
insane.
Those early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s University of Miami teams with the Willis McGahees and Ken Dorsey, and all those guys went on to be Hall of Famers, Patrick Willis. Like, think about do you think, I guess the two-part question, do you think you would have been a guy who was smart enough to find a way to capitalize on NIL? And then B, do you ever think to yourself, man, oh man, this was just, this is now just a whole different, completely Wild West compared to what we had to do to survive in college?
You didn't mention Johnny Manziel and the money he could have made in NIL.
Right. He was making NIL. It just wasn't. It wasn't kosher.
Fully documented, not through the clearinghouse, I think. My wife asked me that the other day, and I think the scenario that was interesting to me is after my sophomore, junior season, I had some good tape. At that point, would I have listened when someone called and said, hey, we're with this other school? Now, at that time, I'd known all the other schools.
Yeah.
And I knew where they were. And if I was a little shaky on a relationship or two, which I wasn't at the time, and for guys like Brian Cabral and Gary Barnett, and also my deep relationships with my team. But in the current world, those deep relationships with your team might have disappeared. Like they might have fluttered off and gone somewhere else. Would I have listened to a person that said, hey, I got a big check. You should come over here to this other school? I don't think I would have listened. I think a lot do though, and I can't blame them for that. We should be allowed to capitalize on what we do, right? At my corporate job, if someone else walks up and hands me money and tells me to come over here, we can do that. Why can't we do that in sport?
I feel like the NIL, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the NIL, in my opinion, is going to keep people in college longer. I think you're seeing it in men's college basketball, especially. Why not run it back when it's hard to make an NBA roster? And I think you're seeing it in college football, too, with guys who are saying to themselves, listen, I could go in the third round maybe, or I could stay in year and make some good money. And college is fun. We all went through college. College is a good time. And you see guys who I think they'll say to themselves, oh, do I have an extra year? Can I have an extra redshirt year? Like, I'd like to stay in this environment for a little longer. Do you agree with that? Or do you think the NIL ultimately end up ruining college football? I think it'll help college sports in the long run as far as the quality and the money that comes into the sports.
I do think it'll keep people in school longer. In a school longer. I can't tell you what school it'll be.
They'll keep transferring.
Right, yeah.
Keep people in the college ranks. I mean, the NCAA is going to die.
Yeah.
There's no way it can keep functioning in the way it does and expect anyone to take it seriously. Eventually, they're going to piss off the Big Ten or the SEC with some regulation that they don't want to do or something. What I mean to say is they'll actually get off their duff and make a regulation because they haven't done any since they said NIL is free. They just kind of stood back and watched, which has been a colossal disaster. I think it's going to fold. So it's going to end up folding into either two super leagues or two grand leagues with kind of two feeders is what I see happening. I think the interesting thing will be, when does the SEC decide to kick out Vanderbilt? What does the calling look like?
Yeah.
What happens there, Indiana, when you're sitting at the bottom of the stack? What's going to go on there?
Yeah.
I don't know when that's going to happen, but they're going to have to start getting tough and not giving those big checks to some of those schools. So that'll be really interesting when that ends up coming.
Yeah, they aren't pulling their weight.
Yeah, I mean, the next decade of college football is going to be pretty fascinating to see how this all evolves and what changes. And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, these conferences are going to continue to be shaken up because it's not stopping at the Big 12, Big 10, all of that stuff.
Look out, ACC.
But so what's that?
Look out, regional rivalries in the ACC.
Yeah, no kidding. So you're getting ready for the NFL in the 2004 NFL draft. What is that entire process like, basically right towards the end of your senior year? I know you participated in the East-West Shrine Bowl. What is that entire process like from I'm finding out, okay, I'm declaring for the draft and like I actually have a legitimate shot to make it, and okay, now here's what we've got to do. We've got to go to the East-West Shrine Bowl and build up the stock and all of that stuff. I'd love to hear kind of the journey in the draft prep process.
It starts off with a month of lies.
Yeah.
Every agent is coming to you and saying, "Hey man, I've been watching you like all this whole time." And those are kind of what college football recruiters are doing today. It kind of feels that way again.
They schmooze you.
And I'm like, "Oh, you've been like out to Boulder, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, where'd you stay?" "Oh, at the hotel, like the Marriott, right?" Like, come on, man.
You're right. So there's a Holiday Inn there on Main Street.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So then they're coming in, they're whispering in your ear, and they're telling you, like, "Hey, we really see you as a first day pick." At the time, that was, first to fourth round, right? And you could, I feel badly for people who get talked out of coming out of college early and then don't get drafted. Because I've heard those sales pitches, and damn, they're appealing. And they're playing to your ego, and they're finding one good thing you ever did. And like, "Oh, you should totally do," like, wow, it's just toxic. So I ended up narrowing down to two agents I thought I could trust. Happenstance, went to school with Kyle Shanahan, right? Bronco lore, lived in Denver. He was our receiver. Okay. He was a couple years ahead of me. So I saw Mike one time at a thing, Mike, and he was like, "Hey, if you ever need a hand, call me." And I exercised that once. I said, "Hey man, I've got two agents I'm looking at. Which one of these do you trust?" And he was like, "You know what? Actually, they're both pretty good. But here's one reason or another." And I jumped on that and used that to help. And his prediction was right on, which is cool. So a month alive. you got to recover a little bit after a football season. So you didn't hit it right away into preparing for the Underwear Olympics. Kind of waited a little bit. But then from there on, you turned into Usain Bolt. You were just sprinting. That was it. You just turned into 4 months of sprint training. That's all. Occasionally we'd do bench press because that's all that matters.
That
Did they
40-yard
give
dash.
you, like, how much mental prep did you have to do for the combine? Because that is a slog of like 3 days of just nonstop grueling, like wearing
Well,
you
the
down.
interviews, yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, obviously there's the physical component, but man, the mental component was probably a bigger aspect, I think.
There's no credit given to what else happens at the combine. They look at the workouts, but point of fact, it's actually more important to succeed that week. You got to run a good 40. That's true. The combine is an exercise only in dumbing your value down. That's it. If you go out and run a 4.2, whatever that kid from Texas ran this year, you can bump your stock up a little bit, but all you can do is hurt yourself. So whenever you see people pull out, that's why, right?
Yeah.
But it's all week. It's from the moment you walk in to the moment you leave. It's a guy sitting at the bar while you go in to get dinner and is like, hey, man, you want a beer? That's a test.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people hanging around the rim there, hanging out at the hotel, hanging out at other places, extending invitations. Hey, let's go off campus and get a little thing here. Let's do this. Let's do that. There's women around. There's like, it's a test. It's one big test. You know the biggest one? I don't know if they still do this. We used to do a Cybex test. You guys don't know what that is.
No.
I haven't heard that. No.
It's a quad extension machine. Like you've seen at the gym where you like put your foot out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what this is, it's a big computer apparatus, and it was testing the ratio of quad to hamstring strength. And they were doing that as a study. If you had some weird ratio, you were going to tear an ACL or some probability thing. It's hard. So when you get on that machine and you blow it out and you're really like hitting it and getting it and trying to get a good score, I guess, they do that first to see what dummies are going to blow out their knee.
Wow.
Getting overexerted on a thing before you go run the best 40 of your life. So they're testing you in a whole bunch of different ways.
Wow.
So I remember coming out and there was a guy out of a smaller school that like he didn't know the process. So I'd been warned, thank goodness. He walked in there blind and was like, hey, do this test. And everybody's like, yeah, I'm going to do the test. Yes. I'm like, no, chill this one out. That's not the test. So we did a lot of that. The Browns used to do a fun thing. I had heard this story the year before. One of my teammates was a first-round pick to Oakland. Oakland, they don't have a team anymore. Damn. I'm old.
Yeah, blast from the past.
So the Browns used to bring in, and in the hotel, in the Marriott, you had a meeting with them. You'd walk in and something was different, right? It wasn't just people in a room. There was a guy in a chair with an open chair across from you, a spotlight on you, and then a bunch of silhouettes in the background. So you didn't know who they were. Your assumption is like head coach, GM, right? It was probably just hotel staff and like the waiter. They're like, hey, bellboy, we need 2 hours of your time.
Yeah. Here's $20. Yeah.
The guy sitting across from you was a shrink. And he was going to push your buttons until you burst. So for me, he was asking a bunch of questions and he like set me up. Like, oh, you were the captain of your team, right? Yeah, totally. I was really proud of that. Oh, but your team was a total failure. You guys didn't make a bowl game. You went 5-6 and like, you're a total failure.
Jeez.
Yeah. I'm really proud of my experience. And so the story I had heard the year before, my buddy was standing in the hallway and he heard a commotion inside. And then the guy ahead of him snapped, stood up, broke the light, stormed out, slammed the door, gave an F-bomb or two, gave a finger, and then walked off. So,
wow.
That player went on to be Warren Sapp. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Warren's off the pup now. Don't talk trash.
Oh, I know. And so you're going through this whole process 24 hours before the draft, right? You got your agent. Talk us through what that is like. You know what I mean? Like, are you getting phone calls? Or did you choose to block things out? Were other teammates going to the draft and going all in? What was your process like, and why did you choose the process you chose?
I think at that point we kind of knew where the slotting was going to be at that point, and I think we had some good data on second day pick, 5th round to 7th. But then a couple days out, a lot of teams are calling and saying, "Hey, we're not going to draft you," which was like, "Thanks. What, did you need to call me and tell me that?" Like,
wow.
they were setting up for, if I didn't get picked, to grab me in free agency. So the team that was the most vocal was the Cowboys. They were just always on it. Well, we should definitely circle back on them. Because that happened later when I was hurt and out of Carolina, so they came back. So those seeds worked. But yeah, I got a couple calls. We decided to do it with just close friends and family. My roommate was also in the draft at that time, so we had a terrible college house that was just rat infested and beer bongs in the corner and stupid stuff. So him and his family were in the basement. My family were upstairs. So we decided just to chill and watch the draft there. I think it was crazy though. So what ends up happening is you see one person that you think you're better than. You see that guy go, and then you're like ready because you're like, I know I'm next on the board. I think I'm better than that guy. Damn it, that guy went there. Can't believe he got that slot. And then if your name's not called in the next 2 or 3 picks, you're pissed, just frustrated, just like I wanted this to be over, and you're so anxious and whatever. At one point during the 5th round, I just kind of left. I just kind of was like, somebody take this phone. I'm going over here, and I'm going to sit I went and played. What stupid video game did I play? Like GoldenEye or something.
Oh, that's
not a stupid video game. A goat video game. But yes.
All right, never mind. I retract that. I played GoldenEye. I was proud of it. So that was the story. So then,
go ahead. Because that's, to me, that's the fascinating thing is Amon-Ra St. Brown can list all 14 wide receivers taken before him, and he holds it as that grudge. So it's interesting to hear even you, a guy, you know what I mean, is no, I think I'm better than that guy. He goes, and that sets you off.
Yeah, totally. And at that point, it's just it doesn't matter at that point. Honestly, in that half of the draft, they're just picking on height, weight, and pedigree and a score. They're not really knowing who you are. So I ended up talking to a guy later in life, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was in the room when you got drafted." I was like, "What? What was that like? Were they just discussing me and debating?" He was like, "Oh no, the guy just thought you looked like Brian Urlacher, so he took you." Okay.
I mean, hey, I'll take it.
We'll take that. So so when Carolina calls, were you shocked it was Carolina?
So I had handed my phone back to my dad, and Colorado is 720. Charlotte is 704. So this weird call came in, and I thought it was just something local. And so my dad came in, and he shoves his phone in my face, and I was like, what the hell? I was thinking it was somebody local because I looked at it. And it was just, I don't remember any of that next 5 minutes, actually.
Wow.
I remember picking back up. I talked to the head coach. I remember who I talked to. And then a PR guy gets on the phone, and he was hilarious. He goes, okay, man, pop quiz. Carolina Panthers. What state are we in?
Yeah, stumped. It's a 50-50 toss-up at that point. Yeah.
And he let dead air go, and he goes, okay, you hesitated. We're in North Carolina. I'll save you. I was like, hey, man, thanks. I didn't know. He goes, I know. We have to tell everyone in the West that. So I later found out we had Kerry Colbert drafted in the 2nd round at SC, and he did that to him too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I feel like New England probably does that too, although now it is, since they're, as famous of a franchise, everyone knows they're in Boston. But
Dan and I were talking before we met up with you, and it was one of the questions I really wanted to ask, because I think that's such a unique experience for young guys, your early 20s, and all of a sudden you're a Colorado kid who's lived his life in Colorado, and now it's like, oh my God, within an instant, my life's now in a place where I don't even know what state it's in. And when you met with other rookies that maybe the Panthers drafted, or, guys who are also coming from California or New York or whatever, talk about that, that next, then 48 hours a week after that, it's like preparing to get your life to a whole different place you've probably never even been to before. Is it daunting? Does the agent help with a lot of things? Does that what you're like, hey, I'm paying you, buddy, you figure this out? How does that work, or how did it work for you versus other guys you knew of their experience?
The next 24 hours is like a bunch of local media, your high school newspaper calls, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of that call, they said, hey, tomorrow you're gonna have a flight. You're coming out to Charlotte. Try to be sober. And so so the next day, all of us landed. Chris Gamble was our 1st round pick. He showed up with a trash bag full of clothes. I remember that was so vivid in my memory. His carry-on luggage was a trash bag.
Wow,
it's like Tommy Boy.
Yeah, he's walking around with a hefty bag with clothes in it. toothbrush in his back pocket. And then, he got like 35 million that day,
Yeah, right.
which didn't come until later. So you don't actually get paid until later, which is crazy.
Oh,
So
interesting. Okay.
it's midsummer until you get your first actual paycheck. So that's interesting. So they pack you into Charlotte. Like OTAs or some rookie mini camp was that same week. So everyone's in the Residence Inn extended stay, and you're just there now. I'd never been to the East Coast. I'd been to New York once at that point in my life, and the furthest I'd been east at that moment was Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like humidity was crazy. There's no humidity where I live. I have none. And so I had to incorporate that into my life. And then for a whole summer, you're kind of at this terrible Marriott because we didn't have any money to go buy a house or anything. I remember the cool part was we had to work out until like 11, and then we just had time. And we took advantage of that time. You know what we did?
Play Goldeneye?
No, yes, we did. Okay.
Yeah.
11:30 Goldeneye, 11:30 Monopoly game, and then a 2:30 Monopoly game. And it was competitive.
I bet.
I bet.
And we would always like sweet talk someone, like someone's girlfriend would come in for the weekend and be like, "You should play." It's so much fun. But at that point on, I had I didn't have anything in my name at that point, and my parents thought I was rich, which I wasn't. So I had 2 big black duffel bags, and in one duffel bag I had an Xbox and some books and like some stuff to do, and then the other duffel bag I just had about 3 months worth of clothes. And everyone in the NFL has everyone in the back end of the NFL, right, has just 2 big black duffel bags, and those just travel with you. And you pick them up and you put them down and you go to a new city. My buddy played for 9 teams in 3 years. He used those duffel bags a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. That's a process.
Guys in today's NFL, they just show up with their phone and they already have NIL money, so they already got money. You know what I mean? It's crazy how much changes probably from just 20 years ago to now. It's a completely different experience, I bet.
So you mentioned something actually I wanted to touch on. I didn't get to choose, right? Like Eli Manning and John Elway got to choose, right?
Right. Yeah.
I got to choose my college. I invested in there. I picked what was going to be my brand. The joke in the NFL is you never get your pro team tattooed on you, right? Because one day you're going to be a different team, right? I had a buddy with a New England tattoo because he was from New England, and then he got drafted by the Giants, which is fun. I didn't get to pick, this logo, right? And that logo is forever tied to me. I didn't really care. I didn't know who that team was. I'd watched them play in the Super Bowl the year before, but didn't know anything else about them. They were that was the 10th or 15th year when I was there. I had an idea of what football was and what the Bears were my team. I asked in my 8th birthday for a Mike Singletary rookie card. That's what I wanted. I wanted to play for the Bears. I wanted to play for the Packers. I wanted to play for the historic
one of the
weather dirty teams.
Yeah.
Charlotte. Great town. Great club. Great organization. It just wasn't my brand, but now I'm forever associated with that, which I've really actually disliked for a while, and I've really come to embrace it. Last year, I went out to Sam Mills Hall of Fame induction. He was my coach there at the time, and he passed away when I was a player. And, I got to go back and unpack a lot of baggage I didn't know I had. I got to leave it there and just enjoy the fact that I had 3 great years there, and it was really fun and awesome and stressful as all get out. But, yeah.
Yeah, what was that like those 3 years? Well, I guess I'll backtrack real quick. I know we're gonna hopefully get you back on later this summer to talk, like go more in depth about training camp, OTAs, like what that experience is like for a lot of these players, but preseason. But just because I'm curious, I moved out here 4 years ago from the Midwest, so I only knew the Midwestern like winters and all of that, and moved out here and covered the Panthers training camps. Were they holding it at Wofford College still when you were out here? And did you guys stay in the dorms there? And what was the first training camp like for you? Where because it does get crazy hot and humid. That's for sure. Yeah.
So Wofford College, what is Wofford in the SoCon League or something like that?
Yeah, they're in the Southern Conference. Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. Not the Southern Eastern Conference. Small school. Beautiful campus, great environment, big, beautiful magnolia trees I've never seen before. I didn't know lightning bugs were real. I had no idea. Saw a lightning bug go by, and I was like, "What the shit was that?
What the hell are we
got
here?"
That bug on fire, and someone was like, "Yeah, man, there's a lightning bug." And I was like,
someone save that That bug, it's on fire. Yeah.
So I thought it was like a jackalope or like, the Easter bunny or something. I didn't know. So first practice, it was 110 degrees and 110% humidity. That's too high. The field was in a bowl. I just totally like uphill both ways to school in the snow thing, you guys right there.
Yeah.
Practice in a bowl, no breeze. I lost 11 pounds in 90 minutes.
Oh, Jesus.
I didn't know. I didn't know how to deal with that. And I came in and were like reweighed, and they were like, "Yeah, you need to go to the hospital." And I was like, "No, I'll be fine."
Wow.
But is the training staff? I mean, like, do they afterwards realize, oh crap, we got this kid who just has no idea? Or, I mean, you talk to the other rookies or the vets. Eventually, do they kind of like help you along, kid? Like, hey, this is how you handle or deal with that.
I built a brand there at the time through the summer of being like, I will crush anything you give me, and I will I will kill myself to try it. That's not all players. There are some people who just have different mentalities, and there's nothing in your pedigree, your background, your school, your city, your race, your position. Nothing in that has anything to do with reality. Everyone shows up and is different. And I had built that brand. And they knew it. So when I was like, oh, I'm fine. I can lose 10 pounds. No big deal. Whatever. And they were like, no, jerk, go sit down. You're getting an IV. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Save you from yourself, basically.
Yeah. And that was the training track. They had to keep me from myself quite a bit, actually, in several facets of life at that point.
Was there, you mentioned, the only thing you knew about the Panthers was they're coming off this Super Bowl season. In general, though, for guys who were drafted then, was there an excitement? Jake Delhomme, this is Muhsin Muhammad. You got a team that is a couple plays away from beating a dynasty. You know what I mean? Like, was there an excitement in the air there with Carolina, at least when you arrived? And could you feel that with the guys in the locker room? Like, hey, this is the first time maybe in this franchise's history that we have expectations, and all of a sudden you're thrust into that?
You know what? It felt like, look, I was on the bottom end of it, right? I was fighting to make the team, right? So I didn't really see that. Looking back on it now, like knowing what I know, there was some guys that had legitimate Hall of Fame potential. Julius Peppers, Steve Smith, Muhsin, maybe not Hall of Fame, but like clearly like legendary guy.
Yeah.
And I could feel there was a couple guys in the room that were like almost gods. Like you could feel that. That was a thing. And then we had a couple other guys who were really close to being like that Pro Bowl level. Dan Morgan, the guy I backed up, he should have got the Pro Bowl that year. And then for about 2 years, he was really on the edge of it, and it didn't come. And
that was tough. The NFC had a lot of good linebackers in the early 2000s. That was tough to make that. You got to get over Brian Urlacher and there's a little bit. Yeah, exactly right.
He was going to be fine. He made the Pro Bowl a couple times.
Yeah.
He's all right.
Could you?
No. Well, who was the quarterback there? Was it Jake Delhomme?
Yeah,
he was still there. Okay, he was still there. Okay,
and I would ask then, one of the things that I love. So I'm a huge fan in the sports talk world of Colin Cowherd, and one of the things he always asks players like
him? Is that why?
No, I don't know, but I just love the way he interviews.
You're a backwards hat guy. He doesn't.
I'm a backwards hat guy. He wouldn't like that, but. The one thing that he always asks guys, and so I'm going to ask you a separate version. He'll ask guys who are, like the Hall of Fame coaches and Hall of Fame players, like, when did you know you could, kind of like make it, or could you spot the guys who day one, they come in as a rookie and you're like, oh crap, we wasted a first round pick and this guy's a bust. When you get to camp and you go from playing at a Power 5 school, you know what I mean? These are some of the best, and you're going up against big schools, other Power 5 schools with big brands and number 1 5-star recruits. And then all of a sudden, there's a Dan Morgan, a Julius Peppers. Like, how, for you personally, you go back to the hotel room after a night, was there ever that night where you're like, holy shit, I don't have a chance? Or was it like, oh, damn, I can play with these guys if I keep working my butt off? Like, and did you see other rookies have that kind of moment of like deer in the headlights, or then the guys who like stepped up to the occasion?
It's an etch-a-sketch. So when you show up in your rookie class, undrafted free agents from Seattle, first round picks from Miami, right? You show up and the entire slate is cleaned. It is all gone. Everything you've ever done does not matter. And you have to make a first impression on that first mini camp that you're going to be a dog. Because a lot of guys show up and you're like, we wasted a pick on this guy. Like he has zero cardio. He can't run. We had a guy that couldn't do, like, in yoga, you do a pillar bridge. He couldn't do a pillar bridge for more than 30 minutes or 30 seconds. And some of these guys just show up and are not ready. And somehow they got in there. And then there's other guys that show up. We had a guy, Jordan Carsons, out of Iowa State. Farm boy, came off a pig farm. Undrafted. Started the first game. He just showed up and was like, I don't care. I'm going to punch you in the mouth. And we're going to do it. And he just walked in and like unloaded. So it's an Etch-a-Sketch. You don't know. Now, there's some economic drivers there that the Etch-a-Sketch remembers. So they were going to give your first-round picks 10 shots to suck. They're going to give you those opportunities to suck. And you're going to lose one, and then you get another one. You get another chance. Your fifth-round pick, you get 3 opportunities to suck. And after that, they start to put you in the back. As a late-round draft pick, as a free agent, as a late-round draft pick, I got 1 shot to make it. One shot where it was like, oh, is this guy going to do it or not? Like, bam, he got it or he didn't. As a rookie free agent, you don't get any shots. You have to hope someone's shoelace breaks and you get in and you show up in that particular moment. So they kind of slot you there because of investment. They were $10 million in on Chris Campbell at that moment. So they were going to make that as much as they could make that work.
The GM's got to make it. Yeah, the GM can't make himself look bad. But I think that's the beautiful thing about football. Like football, it is the epitome of the next man up, the opportunities. Drew Bledsoe goes down. Tom Brady becomes the greatest player of all time. That doesn't really feel like it happens in every other sport the way it happens in football. And I'm sure that's something that kept you motivated even through the injuries to keep saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you can stay on the field and keep playing, like there's still that chance.
Always. And you know what? Cream rises. Just guys come out of nowhere and just catch fire and start balling. And then guys come out of nowhere and just stop. It's crazy.
So in 2006, or was it just ahead of the 2006 season where you had that knee injury that obviously just kind of derailed your career and led to your, eventual retirement? Like what was that year like for you? Because, I can imagine, you're like, wow, I've made it this far. What is the NFL pension is like 4 years, right? So you were
3 years, 3 games.
3 years, 3 games.
No,
okay.
I know
So
that.
like you're on the cusp of all of this, like, and you've known football your whole life. Walk me through what getting that injury was and when the light bulb went off that shoot. Like, I think I'm going to have to go a different route. And I think this is the end of my NFL road.
My second year, I caught a little fire. I got lucky. A guy got hurt. They were going to cement his foot. So I got to go play, right? And the whole story on that one is, this might be a deviation.
That's all right.
I was up all week. He broke his foot in the Monday night game against the Packers, and they were like, yeah, we're going to fix it. So all week I'm up. I'm playing. I'm starting on special teams. I'm in the heavy packages for goal line. Like, I'm in it. I'm ready. I'm going to get the shot. And Friday night comes. We're flying to Arizona to play out there in September. Not a cool weather climate. And they call me the night before the plane, and they're like, hey, man, we're going to cement his foot tonight. I think it's going to go well. So we're probably going to leave it open and let him go 3 weeks, then bring him back. I always took alcohol and football very, very seriously. You never overlapped them. You never went. There was a Thursday night party culture in Boulder. We never did that. We cut that out. I kept it real clean. In that moment, I was like, I am out. I am going for broke. So I remember, you have to tell all my bad stories. I remember throwing up at 4. And I remember putting my phone next to my bed, a Trio. And I turned the volume all the way up just in case they call. Like the one piece of clarity I had. Yeah, they called. 8 a.m. Hey, can you be at the plane in 45 minutes?
Jeez.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So I am hammered. I'm on the plane. The general manager hands me a contract to sign it. And I was like, and I looked at, I had the biggest cojones I've ever had. I said, I could probably hold out here for more money. And he goes, until we land, and then you're out.
Right.
Until we land.
Yeah.
So I caught fire. The end of that year, I ended up playing 16 games that year. the end of that year, we weren't supposed to make the playoffs, and we lucked in because the Saints like totally fumbled, as they always do. We lucked into the playoffs. We go to New York. At this point, my knee's bugging me. It's kind of swelling up a little bit. It's just kind of funky. End of the year, no one cared. But then we kept winning. We go up to New York and shut them out in the first round, and then my knee gets big, like baseball or like balloon style big. And I was like, something's wrong. And then we win again in Chicago. You're welcome.
I remember that.
Then we go to, so this whole time I'm hiding. I'm like wearing sweatpants so no one sees my knees all huge. I'm wrapping it. I'm trying to spend every time I can not doing it. What ended up happening was a hole in my cartilage had kind of pulled back. And every time I turned left, I could shuffle left. I couldn't like articulate and turn over that part because I would go bone to bone, fall on the ground, lightning through my hair. It just hurt a lot. So I played the last couple of games running down on kickoff, trying not to turn left.
Jesus.
I was Zoolandering it. So
yeah, don't turn left.
So I'm talking to the coaches. I'm like, hey, I'm punt. Can I switch sides? And like, why? You've been that side the whole year. And I was like, no reason. So I just had to hide it. And I knew if I got yanked, I'd get yanked. I was like, we only have one more game left. And the NFL playoff games are a fixed fee. Everybody gets the same amount. Not true for the rest of the year. The first round or the important guys get all their money in 17 big checks. So these checks were big for me. They were huge compared to what I normally got. So I was pumped. So then after the Seattle game, we go up there and get slaughtered. They went to the Super Bowl and got beat. I went and I was like, hey, I need an exit physical on this knee. And they were like, oh, why? You've been playing the whole time. It's great. It wasn't great. So I get the MRI back and like, you're kind of just have an old person knee, a football player's knee, all this like minimization language. I'm like, hey, I'm going to send it to my surgeon back home, who's actually the Broncos guy. And he reads it, calls me back within 15 minutes. Is like, hey, you need surgery tomorrow. Like, fly up here. We're doing it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, shit. So that's where we were at. I decided to play hardball, which probably blacklisted me. We went that year. They drafted a guy. They always do. They brought in a free agent. They always do. But then we go out to practice and OTAs that spring, and they were worried about me getting hurt further and really hurting myself. And what they were worried about is they'd have to pay me for that. Because at that point, I owed my contract if I get hurt. So it was a race to cut me. So we'd go out to practice, and they would take my helmet. They wouldn't let me run.
Really? Wow.
So we played Buffalo, and the first cuts were the next day during that off season. And 40 minutes before the first cuts, I walked in and said, I'm going home to Colorado. I'm getting surgery. I'm out. And they did not like that. So that was the last time I played football.
There it is. I will say, in just a final kind of closing on this interview, you talked there about that last time you played football. Now, all these years later, when you look back on it and you go through your daily life, I mean, you just said you see Stink at the airport or whatever, you're going around, like, do you feel, though, the fraternity of the NFL? And I mean, even as a guy that maybe didn't make the name for himself in the NFL, when you bump into someone or you run into someone or they say, hey, I think I played in the NFL or whatever it might be, and then you have the connections of, oh, well, I was, that guy was my coach and he was your coach. Does that still follow you in your day-to-day life? And is it a proud feeling for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally. I'm going to my kid's school next week to talk about it. Like it's a brand that follows me. And I end up talking a lot about it because people are interested. And I think it's cool too. I don't mind it. You know what it is? The thing I like is it's not necessarily other football players. Sure, that connection is there. It's immediate. It happens. I have a job at Optiv because of another football player that just happened. I love when I see a cross-country athlete, like a guy with a triathlon bag from like Kona or something, right? Or I see someone that's got like a really nice violin. That's when I love it because I get to saddle up and say, tell me what makes you good at that. Like, tell me why you enjoy this instrument. Tell me what it's like to intellectualize what you're doing, because here's my experience. And this is what I felt like. The thing about wrestling and hand position and placements, right? Like, I like having that conversation with people from other places and parts to learn what they do and how they do it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
so
very cool.
That's what I really like. And be able to connect with
leaning into the passions as much as you possibly can.
And why they are who they are. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Sean, really appreciate the time here. Hope we can get you back on later this summer because there's still a whole lot that we want to ask you. And it can only fit so much into an hour, but yeah, I'd really,
I'll
really
give you
do
a
appreciate
cliffhanger.
it.
You want a cliffhanger for next
Oh
time?
yeah,
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. Let's do it.
You can hear why the Dallas Cowboys made me openly weep at the airport.
Oh,
Ah, okay. All right. Well,
because Jerry Jones is trying to grab your shoes or something. He, doing something.
You got to tune in next time. You got to
All
invite
right,
me
I
back.
like it.
Yeah,
I'm ready to tune in.
there we go. I love it. All right. A perfect teaser for next time. So now we've got the cliffhanger to stick to. Perfect. All right. Appreciate it, Sean. Thank you. And we'll see you back here next time.
Thanks, guys.